Hello and welcome back to Board Game TV, and we're doing our history of Ghost Rider, and we are on part 2 of series 2. And I like to call this expansions, crossovers, and team-ups, because that's what this period is going to be marred by. Now, first 2 years of Ghost Rider were wrapped up nice and neat in a bow. Now things are fixing to take a real big turn for Ghost Rider during this era. And wow, it still, as many faults as it had, it still was an exciting time for this book. As a matter of fact, you could say the excitement got ramped up quite a bit for this era. And although this kind of was the beginning of the end, at first it didn't seem like that. At first everything was a success. And you'll see what I'm talking about in a little bit. So basically what happens in issue 25, which is the next gimmick cover, because it's a gatefold cover. Blackout returns. He had been rescued by this group called the Firm, the leader of it was named Stern, and they're the ones who rescued the Scarecrow as well. And they want him to find Danny and track him down so they can capture the Ghost Rider and experiment on him. That's what they do. They use superpower heroes, they capture them, they experiment on them to come up with weapons. Of course, Blackout's not having none of it, and he betrays them, and he goes and captures Danny's family, makes Danny confront him, and he kills Danny Ketch, rips his throat. At that point in time, Ghost Rider, Danny changes into Ghost Rider, and so he's stuck as being Ghost Rider. If he changes back to Danny, Danny will die. In the end, Blackout is captured. Ghost Rider is on his own, so he goes to seek the help of Johnny Blaze. Now we have our first crossover, and it is with the X-Men. On his way to go help Johnny Blaze, he teams up with the X-Men to basically fight the Brood in a 3-issue series. Now, 2 issues of it are Ghost Rider, 1 issue of it is X-Men. It's an okay thing. It's typical Jim Lee 90s X-Men. But at this point in time, the art had been taken over by Ron Wagner. Ron Wagner took over the art after Tex left at issue 25. As you can see, Ron Wagner does a good job. Although not up there on the levels with Saltaires and Tex, he still does a very good job, and he was a competent artist. He would go on and go to leave Ghost Rider to do the Morbius series, which we'll talk about in a little bit. His replacement was Andy Kubert. Andy Kubert would take over from issues 28 to 31. Now, the Kuberts ended up becoming superstar artists, and always were because of their legacy of their father. And so the art style for them on this book was pretty good. However, they would leave to go do the spin-off series Spirit's Vengeance, which was Ghost Rider and Blaze. But they had a nice little run from issues 28 to 31 on Ghost Rider. Speaking of our spin-off series, we get our next big crossover and expansion in the Rise of the Midnight Suns. And it starts with Ghost Rider issue 28. And it would spin off several titles. The first title it would spin off would be Spirit's Vengeance, which is Ghost Rider and Johnny Blaze. And it focuses a little bit more on Johnny Blaze than the Ghost Rider. And it talks about their adventures. I think it was meant to really be them going around seeking and fighting crime and evil and stuff like that, but it turned into something else. It was written by Howard Mackey, who now is writing 3 books. He's writing Ghost Rider, he's writing Spirit's Vengeance, and he's writing a Spider-Man book called Web of Spider-Man, I believe. He's at least those 3 books. And you're going to tell that his writing is going to start becoming affected. He's going to overreach himself by writing 3 books. at the least. Not quite yet, but it will start to take its toll. And you can't, I mean, imagine you had to write 3 comic books every month. You know, I don't care what kind of profession you are, you're going to start having problems, and your work's going to start lacking. However, the next book in the series is going to be, oh, and also, at one point in time, Spirits of Vengeance will actually be a better book than Ghost Rider. And it's kind of you kind of got problems when you have your spin-off book performing better than your main book. However, that would be short-lived. But for a while, Spirits of Vengeance was actually a better book. Because while Johnny Blaze didn't really show up in the Ghost Rider comics, or wasn't really meant to, Spirits of Vengeance had him and him and Ghost Rider, and it seems like Howard Mackie poured a little bit more of his attention into that book, and the stories were a little bit more coherent. Never mind the fact that at the point in time, after the Kuberts left Ghost Rider to go do Spirits of Vengeance, Brett Blevins would take over on the art, and he would do issues 32 through 37. Now, Brett Blevins is a decent artist, but his style did not fit Ghost Rider at all, and the book started to suffer for it. Now, he did do some Batmans around the Nightfall time, everything, so I had liked his art in that, but his style just did not fit the Ghost Rider. And so because of that, the Spirits of Vengeance title would be, for like I said, a little while, more popular and considered to be better than Ghost Rider. So the next book to come out in the Midnight Suns after that was Morbius. Then it was The Darkhold. And then it was Night Stalkers. And what this was meant to do was to form a corner of the Marvel Universe with dark supernatural type heroes. Marvel wanted a supernatural corner in the Marvel Universe. Now, unfortunately, these titles had problems right out of the gate. Morbius had recently appeared as a villain in Spider-Man, and now they were going to try to make him sort of good. And he is good. The art was by Ron Wagner. However, all of these spin-off books, all these Midnight Suns titles, none of them will last 2 years. Spirits of Vengeance lasted 2 years. The rest of them died beforehand. Darkhold didn't even last a year. And Darkhold was a group of people who were basically new, and they went around tracking pages of the Darkhold, which was like the Book of the Dead, to try to prevent Chthon from reappearing and destroying the world. And that's what it was kind of like the Friday the 13th series. Every issue, as you can see there, the art style for it, every issue was about them tracking a missing page from the book. And of course, the missing page brought about some kind of trouble or curse to whoever read it. The book had a terrible art style. It had an interesting story, and it had interesting premises, and could have actually went somewhere. But the art killed it, and the book wouldn't even last a year. And like I said, this is the 90s. Maybe if they had tried that during some other period, the book would have been successful, but during the 90s, art was everything. And so the art basically killed that book. It had a very un-horror-like art style. And then the Night Stalkers. Frank Drake, Blade, and Hannibal King. They brought all 3 of these guys back. They were all vampire hunters from in the 70s, the Tomb of Dracula comics and stuff like that. And the book lasted a little while. It's because Ron Garney would do the art on it. Now, Ron Garney would later become a big-time superstar for Marvel Comics for his art. However, he got his start, or as far as I know, he got his start on Night Stalkers. He would leave Night Stalkers and become the regular artist, as you can see there, for Ghost Rider, starting with issue 39. After he left Night Stalkers, again, they replaced with a better artist, and the book started to suffer. The book would end up getting canceled. However, Blade would get his own series right after that. However, that would end up getting canceled, I think, within about a year as well. However, this was sort of a renaissance for Blade. And if Blade, I argue, if Blade had not made this comeback in the Midnight Suns, we never would have got the Wesley Snipes Blade movie. And if we never got the Wesley Snipes Blade movies, who knows what other movies we never would have got. But this brought Blade back into the limelight, kind of made him a popular character again. But you're going to see the Midnight Suns have to team up and fight various evils several times. There's going to be several crossovers. And Ghost Rider and everybody was always guest starring in everybody's books. And it kind of made for a big mess. It started out okay. And basically, the big evil that is arriving is Lilith, the mother of demons. And so basically the thing about Rise of the Midnight Suns is all these groups. Doctor Strange kind of gets all these groups together to try to team up. None of them really like each other. I mean, Blade wants to kill Morbius. They're not too big on Ghost Rider and Blaze and all that kind of stuff. They team up to fight Lilith. And in the end, they end up defeating Lilith but not killing her. And one of the things about Lilith, though, is Blackout. He discovers that he's part Lilith. That's why he was always different. She kind of gives him more power. He becomes like almost a real vampire, going around drinking blood all the time. This is Blackout's kind of low point, to be honest with you. They kind of changed his character a little bit, and he's nowhere near as good. They would later go back and fix this, but when she goes down, Blackout goes down. And so does a bunch more of her other Lilin. She has a bunch of Lilin that can do all kinds of crazy things and are serious monsters and stuff. Probably the most famous one to come out of that was Skinner, which, as you can see, is messing up Johnny Blaze there. Skinner would get his own action figure in the Ghost Rider toy line. And he basically is a big skeleton under that, and he hunts people, and he takes their skin and he puts the skin on him. And he hates Lilith for making him do that, but he hates good guys as well, humans, and he's pretty strong and powerful. He's the only one really of worthwhile to ever come out of the whole groups of Lilith. So the Midnight Suns gets wraps up. They finally get a hold of Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange finally brings Danny back and saves Danny, and so Danny is back in the land of the living. However, we're going to get our next crossover, and it's going to be with Spider-Man, and it's going to be Spirits of Venom. As you can see, it's crossover time. So we've had an X-Men crossover, Midnight Suns crossover, and now a Spider-Man crossover. And this is when Venom was in the point in his career where he kind of turned good. He tried to protect the innocent and fight evil, but he still hated Spider-Man. He couldn't stand Spider-Man and wanted to kill him. Well, Hag and Troll have the lifeless body of Deathwatch. Deathwatch's body was not destroyed, and they want to try to bring him back. However, they kill some guardsmen and some of those guardsmen people to do it, and Venom finds out, so Venom tries to hunt him. Johnny Blaze and Ghost Rider kind of get caught up with him to try to find Hag and Troll. Spider-Man gets put into the mix, and you got a big free-for-all. Eventually, all four have to team up, defeat Hag and Troll, and stop Deathwatch from being resurrected, which they do. And they part ways with Venom, not on good terms, because in the end Venom wants to beat Spider-Man, but Spider-Man and Ghost Rider and Blaze stop him from killing Spider-Man, and Venom gets captured again. So there you go. It's actually a really good series, and it ties in with Web of Spider-Man, which is the other book Mackie writes, so it all feels coherent and works out really well. Spirits of Vengeance, Mephisto comes back. And he's wanting to play a part in this big supernatural, quote, war that's supposed to be coming. So he creates his own Ghost Rider. So we end up getting the creation of Vengeance. Thank Venom. Thank Ghost Rider's, he's Ghost Rider's Venom. He kind of looks like him, but kind of doesn't. He has basically the same powers as Ghost Rider, except he's a little bit stronger. And he, of course, wants to kill Ghost Rider and he's totally evil. Now, at first, we don't know who Vengeance is. Somebody goes to sell, make a deal with the devil to get Ghost Rider, and he says, "I'll do anything." And so he kind of gives his soul to the devil, and the devil gives him the powers of Vengeance, and turns him into Vengeance. But later on, you'll find out who Vengeance is, and it's not quite cut and dried as that. But Vengeance would become Ghost Rider's main big villain. And actually, he would be one of the coolest villains. As you can see, Vengeance there, just going to town. However, not too long after that, they would do the Venom treatment on Vengeance and would turn him sort of into a good guy. And if you liked it, you liked it. You didn't. I mean, that's just the way you have to have your opinion like that. Maybe the same way you feel about Venom. Do you like Venom good? Do you like him bad? Do you like him in that in-between area? So that's what they would do with Vengeance. But that whole storyline is in a crossover. Well, not quite. It kind of crosses over. Ghost Rider issues are crossover with Spirits of Vengeance issues quite often during this period of time. So you'll get that. But in regular Ghost Rider comics, during Blevins' run, he does issues 32 to 37. You get Madcap. You get Death Ninja, who supposedly is a ninja Ghost Rider killed in issue 2 or 3 on accident. And the return of Mr. Hyde. Nightmare comes about and tries to muck up things and destroy Ghost Rider. He doesn't. I think he's concluded that it's not Zarathos. So finally, and we get the next graphic novel in the Ghost Rider is Fear. It's Ghost Rider and Captain America team up to take down the recently escaped Scarecrow, who had escaped from the firm's clutches and went on a killing spree. And it's a good graphic novel. It really is. You wouldn't think Captain America would be a good team up with Ghost Rider, but the Scarecrow is excellent. The art for the book is excellent. The story is pretty damn good. And it's a real good book. Of course, it ends with Scarecrow being captured, but the firm get him again and capture him again. And so this is going to be a reoccurring theme with Scarecrow. He gets captured and then he gets loose again. So of course, we have another gimmick cover in Spirits of Vengeance 12. It's another glow-in-the-dark cover. So there we go. One last thing to note. Reverend Stidge's master was Centurious. Centurious has finally been revealed. And he's been behind the firm. And he eventually destroys the firm. The leader of the firm, Stern. He also brought back Steel Wind. Steel Wind makes her come back from this. And she has a sister named Steel Vengeance. Steel Vengeance tries to kill Johnny Blaze. Says her master knows who he better prepare for her master's coming. And she never outright tells him. But come to find out, it is Centurious. Centurious is free and brought back Steel Wind and is behind the firm trying to destroy Ghost Rider and is trying to kill Johnny Blaze and Ghost Rider. But where is Zarathos? Nobody knows. So, I remember when it finally was officially revealed in the comics that it was Centurious. I was happily excited. Now, they changed up his look a little bit. But he's still a pretty powerful guy, and he's still as cool as ever. And I loved it when they brought him back. I was like, wow, all right, man, things are pumping. So now in the Ghost Rider mystery, we're just, where's Zarathos? Is Ghost Rider Zarathos, or is Zarathos somewhere else? You just don't know. Also during this time, Marvel would release Midnight Suns Unlimited. It's basically a quarterly book that would feature tales of all the Midnight Suns. Marvel would do this with a lot of their titles. Spider-Man would get a quarterly book. X-Men would get a quarterly book. DC even tried to do stuff like that. And the quarterly book format, remember, this is the era of excess, so they're trying to make as much money and cool stuff as we can. Would not last but maybe a couple of years. I know for Ghost Rider it lasted, I think maybe 2. I don't know how long for Spider-Man, but yeah, eventually the quarterly format book would go bye-bye. And thank goodness, because really, unless they were part of a crossover, they really didn't add much. I think the most important quarterly book Marvel ever put out was the Maximum Carnage. The first Spider-Man Unlimited was, I think, the first part of the very well-known Maximum Carnage storyline. I remember having that book. So the quarterly book format was just another attempt to make more comic books to make more money, and eventually went kibosh, was gone. So then we get yet another crossover with the Midnight Suns. All of them get this dark black cover, and it's about the Midnight Massacre, and it's basically where Blade gets a hold of a page of a Darkhold that'll help him wipe out all supernatural on Earth. Any supernatural being he kills, he absorbs their power. He ends up killing most of the Midnight Suns, even Ghost Rider, Demi-Goblin, a few others, and it's actually a really cool story. Now you have to go for a big art adjustment from one book to another, but it's a really good story, and it gets wrapped up in the end. Blade gets turned back, and all the people he killed basically come back. But it had every issue. It was a 1-month crossover with every Midnight Suns title, and every issue had a black parchment cover, and it was just kind of another gimmick type thing. But the story was actually very good. A couple other things to mention. Ghost Rider finally got its first annual during this period of time. The Kuberts would do the art for Spirits of Vengeance, I think, till about issue 12. Then Mike Manley would take over for a little bit. Mike Manley, I also remembered from Batman, and he did an issue of Ghost Rider. He did issue 38 of Ghost Rider. Manley's art is a step up from Brett Blevins. It's good, but it's not great. And his art on Spirits of Vengeance is okay, it's good, but it's nowhere near the level of the Kuberts. So that's why that book would suffer a little bit more. But Manley would do a decent job on that book. So by the end of this, we have Garney doing the art for Ghost Rider, which was back to form. Garney is a very good artist. Now, he was still in his younger days before he had perfected his craft, but it was a big improvement, and I was very happy with the art. If you couldn't have Saltaires or Tex, Garney was fine with me. His art was good. It was a different style, but it was very good. And you had Manley doing Spirits of Vengeance, so it was good. And you had this whole thing about, okay, what's the origin? We're fixing to get the origin of Ghost Rider and everybody, so there was some excitement in the air. Reverend Stidge was killed by the Punisher in an issue of Darkhold. So, you know, Stidge wanted the Punisher to work for him, offering to bring his family back, blah, blah, blah. Punisher basically shot him in the head and killed him. Okay. Alright. Alright, so then we come to the final part where we get 6 issues, 3 from Ghost Rider, starting with issue 41 and ending with issue 43, and Spirits of Vengeance starting with issue 14 and ending with issue 16, the Road to Vengeance crossover. And this is basically supposed to tell, as you can see, that's one issue of it, the true origin of Ghost Rider and what exactly has been going on. And every issue had that neon chain stuff on the cover, which was like that, which was horrible. I don't know what they were thinking when they did that. So I want to try to sum up the best of this origin and what happens during this storyline as I possibly can. First, Lilith comes back. and she brings back her Lilith. And Blackout, of course, goes to attack Ghost Rider. Now, there's a character that was introduced at the beginning of the Midnight Sun storyline whose name was Caretaker. Now, if you've seen the movie or read any of the later series, you're probably familiar with him. And who or what he is has kind of been shrouded in mystery. But he appears back during this storyline to explain the origins of Ghost Rider and how they have to stop Lilith once and for all. And turns out he's been a member of this ancient race called the Blood that have been around for eons, and they kind of safeguard in a way humanity, but the rest of the Blood doesn't really want to get involved or help humanity out no more. And so it's up to him to explain the origins of Ghost Rider. So that's basically what happens in the first issue. The second issue is Centurious sends Skinner to attack Johnny Blaze and the Quentin Carnival, which the Quentin Carnival comes back. Now during all this, I think I forgot to mention this, but during all this, when Johnny Blaze is running around with Ghost Rider, he sent his wife and kids into hiding to kind of protect them while he still hangs with the Quentin Carnival. And we have some new characters from the Quentin Carnival, but none of the characters from the original series, which I always found odd. They never mention what happened to any of the characters from the original series. We got some new characters of the Quentin Carnival, and they're like his tight-knit family. Well, anyway, Skinner cuts up Johnny Blaze real good, but they end up saving him, and they turn Johnny Blaze into a Cable look-alike. He goes with a new look, and it looks terrible. He's got a metal plate on half his face. He's got like almost like a metal arm on one of his arms, and then a metal leg on one of his legs. And his trench coat is gone. He wears like a sleeveless jacket now, and his shotgun's held by a chain. This look was a big faux pas, and I don't know why they decided to do it. Cable was very popular at the time, I guess, so they wanted to make Johnny Blaze more like Cable. And this irked a lot of people. This look will not last that long. It was generally poo-pooed, and rightly so. So, issue part 3 of the Road to Vengeance, Centurious brings Deathwatch back, and Ghost Rider and Blaze travel to the town of Holly. You remember Holly, that town from the first series? And he brings Deathwatch back, and Deathwatch and Ghost Rider fight. Ghost Rider wins, and this would be the last you ever see of Deathwatch. In my opinion, Deathwatch at one point in time was one of my favorite Ghost Rider villains. He is a really good villain, but I think Howard Mackie dropped the ball with him, and him never appearing again in this series was a big mistake. Deathwatch was a big baddie, and for him to get totally wasted kind of, to me, was a big slight. I was very unhappy with that. So the third part is Vengeance comes back and attacks Ghost Rider and Blaze. And at the end, Ghost Rider and Blaze beat him, and you find out Vengeance is actually been Lieutenant Michael Baldino. And it was Michael Baldino that sold his soul to the devil to get revenge. Apparently, when Johnny Blaze was Ghost Rider, Zarathos soul fried his dad, and his dad went crazy and killed his mother. And it really affected Baldino, and so Baldino's hated Ghost Rider ever since. Now this never happened in the first series, but but they say it did. But you never really saw it happen. The fourth part is basically, the fifth part is Centurious gearing up for the final battle against Ghost Rider and Blaze. And of course he has Steel Wind with him. And Caretaker rescues Vengeance and because he says you're going to be needed. You play a more part of this than you know, and so on. And so we learn basically the origins of Ghost Rider, and they mess with the continuity a little bit. It's basically there's this thing called the Medallion of Power, and a long, long time ago, the Spirits of Vengeance, and there were 4 of them, used the Medallion of Power to defeat Zarathos, who is a big bad and a big threat to the world. Now, whether or not this is before Zarathos' origin in the first series or after Zarathos' origin in the first series is never made clear. I think it's implied this actually happened before Mephisto defeated Zarathos in the first series. Well, anyways, Medallion was guarded by the blood. They gave it to the Spirits of Vengeance. The Spirits of Vengeance defeated Zarathos, and so it was determined that the medallion was too powerful, and it was split into 4 pieces and divided among, I think, 2 families. And a piece would pass down literally inside the person from generation to generation. So a person would have a piece of the medallion inside, I guess, their soul or whatever, and when they died, the piece would pass to the firstborn next descendant. Basically, one of the pieces was in Johnny Blaze, and this is kind of where the origin gets a little muddled. But Johnny Blaze is like, no, I got my Ghost Rider powers from Mephisto. He, bonded my soul with Zarathos. And Caretaker tells him, yeah, he did, but Mephisto has always been a liar and manipulator. He chose you to bond your soul with Zarathos because he wanted to try to get access to the Medallion of Power. So they use that. And they say Baldino, he has a piece of the Medallion of Power inside him, and saying that's where he gets his power from. That he doesn't get his power from selling his soul to the devil, that the devil just lied to him and let Baldino tap into the Medallion of Power inside of him. And he says Danny has 2 pieces of the medallion in him, because Barb had 1 piece and he had the other piece. And when Barb died, her second piece went into him, and that's why he's a little bit more powerful than anybody else. He was never supposed to be a Ghost Rider. It was always supposed to be Barb. And then he does the last revelation that Danny and Barb were adopted by Francis Ketch, and that Danny and Johnny are actually siblings. Barton Blaze had an affair with, I think, Naomi Ketch, and she had babies. And so Johnny and Danny, come to find out, are actual brothers. So in the end, with all this knowledge together, they defeat Centurious. And of course Lilith has also teamed up with Centurious, and Lilith is watching. And out of Centurious, once he's defeated, out of Centurious comes Zarathos. So Zarathos has been inside Centurious this whole time. And so the last part is where they all have to team together. Ghost Rider, Blaze, Vengeance, Caretaker, to defeat Lilith and Zarathos. And Zarathos does not look anything like he did in the first series as well. They've 90s him up. He has a cape and everything. He also has different powers. He uses elemental powers and not really fire or anything. Now when he first comes out, he's not at full power. He doesn't know his origin. He has the amnesia again. But this Zarathos is very much different in many ways from the Zarathos we knew in the first series. And that is kind of my pet peeve. I can handle the Medallion of Power part. But for Zarathos, and they say this is Zarathos in his true form, so they're implying that the big fire skeleton you saw Zarathos as in the first series was not his true form. I guess it would kind of make a little bit of sense. So anyways, basically what happens is They push Zarathos back. They use the Medallion of Power, which is somehow also physical manifestation on each of their motorcycles, and take the pieces of the Medallion of Power, put them together, and use it to defeat Zarathos. But they don't really defeat Zarathos. They just open another dimensional realm and push Zarathos into it, which Zarathos gets out next issue. I mean, it's like immediate. They think they've won, but they didn't win. And so that will set up a huge crossover. But we'll get into that next video. So as you can see, a lot happens with this series at this point, and it is a huge expansions, like I said, crossovers, team ups, and right now it's working for this book. But they're fixing to go and do the biggest and most ambitious crossover yet, and it's eventually going to end up killing this series. Now, you look at this and you think about all this. Now remember, now all this gimmick covers, crossovers, spin-off books, team-ups was done through issue basically 25 of Ghost Rider through 43 of Ghost Rider. So, you know, almost basically what a year and a half in that short period of time. Okay? In that short period of time, you had all this happen. And it was getting very convoluted. And you had an introduction of a bunch of new villains, mainly with the Lilin and stuff like that. So as you can see, yes, it was exciting to finally learn the origin and history of Ghost Rider. Yes, it was to see Centurious come back. Yes, it was great to see Zarathos come back. And but you know, like I said, a lot of this spin-off stuff and would end up getting canceled within a couple years, and Marvel would have to rebrand after this. The Midnight Suns doesn't last too long, and you know, period of excess. What can you say? So I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time where we go over the beginning of the end for Ghost Rider Series 2.